Namaste everyone, I am your co-host Shravani ma'am. Welcome to your favorite learning channel. The topic for today's video is prokaryotic and eukaryotic cell. So we already know that all the living organisms are composed of cells, and based on the kind of cells they are made up of, they can be divided into two groups. Okay, so based on the kind of cells, okay, organisms can be divided into two types, that is prokaryotes. Prokaryotes are those organisms that have prokaryotic cells, and the other one is eukaryotes. So eukaryotes are those organisms that have eukaryotic cells. Now what are these prokaryotes and what is prokaryotic cell? So the prokaryotic cell are those prokaryotes, they have prokaryotic cell, that is their cell, they lack nucleus and other membrane bound organelles. Okay, so prokaryotes are those organisms that have prokaryotic cell. Now prokaryotic cell are those cells that lack nucleus and all the other membrane bound organelles. Now let's consider some of the examples of prokaryotes. Example: bacteria, then blue-green algae, etc. These are some of the examples of prokaryotes that have prokaryotic cell. Alright, then let's talk about eukaryotes. Now these eukaryotes are those organisms that have eukaryotic cell, and their cell, they have a well-defined nucleus, and they also have all the membrane bound organelles. Okay, so such cells are called eukaryotic cells, and the organisms that have such cells are called eukaryotes. For example, the animals, the plants, etc. Okay, so these are some of the organisms that are eukaryotes, that is they have eukaryotic cell. Okay, so now we would see what is the difference between prokaryotic cell and eukaryotic cell. Okay, so the first characteristic that we would consider here for difference is the cell size. So the cell size in case of prokaryotic cell, the average is, their average diameter is 0.5 to 5 micrometers. Okay, and in case of eukaryotic cell, the diameter varies between 0.1 micrometer to 40 micrometers. Okay, so this is the cell size. Next characteristic feature for difference is the protoplasm. So the protoplasm in case of prokaryotic cell is relatively rigid, okay, and it is resistant to what? Resistant to drying, or we can also call drying as desiccation, and it can withstand wide changes in what? In pressure as well as in temperature, okay. Whereas in case of eukaryotic cell, the protoplasm is more fluid. It is more fluid and it is more sensitive, okay, fluid and sensitive to drying and to the changes in pressure as well as in temperature, okay. So next feature or characteristic of differentiation would be the nucleus. So in prokaryotic cell, the prokaryotic cells lack true nucleus, okay. Then they have circular DNA. Circular DNA is present, that is naked in cytoplasm, and they have no chromosome. So prokaryotes do not have chromosomes. Nucleolus or nuclear membrane. Nucleoplasm is undifferentiated from cytoplasm, okay. Then nucleoplasm is undifferentiated. It is undifferentiated from the cytoplasm, okay. Whereas eukaryotic cells have true nucleus bound by nuclear membrane. Bound by what? It is bound by nuclear membrane, and they contain linear DNA. They have linear DNA associated with what? Associated with proteins and RNA. Proteins and RNA, which forms what? Chromosomes, okay. And nucleolus and nuclear membrane are present, which was absent in case of prokaryotic cell, and nucleoplasm is also distinct. Nucleoplasm, how is it? It is distinct, okay. Then after nucleus, the next feature or characteristic would be organelles. So, prokaryotic cells have prokaryotic cells, the membrane bound organelles. Membrane bound organelles. So the membrane bound organelles could be the organelles like Golgi bodies, plastids, mitochondria, endoplasmic reticulum. All these are membrane bound organelles, and such membrane bound organelles are absent in case of prokaryotic cells, whereas in case of eukaryotic cells the membrane bound organelles like we just now discussed, that is Golgi bodies, plastids, mitochondria, endoplasmic reticulum, etc. All these membrane bound organelles are present in case of eukaryotes or eukaryotic cell. Okay, then after that we would talk about ribosomes. So in case of prokaryotic cell, ribosomes are smaller and randomly scattered in cytoplasm, whereas in case of eukaryotic cells the ribosomes are bigger. They are bigger and they can be free or they can be attached to the ER, that is to the endoplasmic reticulum. Okay, then the next would be cell division. Okay, so if we talk about cell division, prokaryotic cell divides by simple fission. It divides by simple fission. Okay, spindle is not formed and no mitosis and meiosis. No spindle formation. Also, there is no mitosis and there is no meiosis. Okay, whereas in case of eukaryotic cell division takes place by, it divides by the process of mitosis or by meiosis. Okay, then after that we would be talking about respiration. So respiratory enzymes, the respiratory enzymes are located on, where are they located? They are located on the plasma membrane in case of prokaryotic cells, whereas in case of eukaryotic cells mitochondria are the seat of, so mitochondria are the seat or are the site of aerobic respiration. aerobic respiration. Okay. So after that, we would be talking about photosynthesis. So photosynthesis, if we talk about, okay, photosynthesis. So in case of prokaryotic organisms, there is no organized chloroplast. No organized chloroplast, and photosynthesis takes place on photosynthetic membranes. So the process of photosynthesis occurs on photosynthetic membranes, and these membranes, they lie freely. Where do they lie freely? They lie freely in the cytoplasm. Okay. Now in case of eukaryotic cells, there are organized chloroplasts. There are organized chloroplasts that contain stacked membranes called grana that take part in photosynthesis. Take part in photosynthesis, and the process of photosynthesis usually takes place in plants. Okay, animals do not have chloroplasts and they do not perform photosynthesis. Now we would talk about the examples. So prokaryotic cells would include bacteria and blue-green algae, which are also known as cyanobacteria, and all other organisms would be the examples for eukaryotic cells. That is, it would include animals, it would include all the plants, it would also include human beings, etc. Okay. So now let's quickly revise everything that we have studied today. So today here we talked about the prokaryotic and eukaryotic organisms. So we already knew that all the living organisms are composed of cells, and based on the kind of cells the organisms have, there are two types of organisms, that is prokaryotes. Now prokaryotes have prokaryotic cell, and the other type of organisms are called eukaryotes, and eukaryotes have eukaryotic cell. So the prokaryotes are those organisms having prokaryotic cell, and prokaryotic cells are those cells that lack a proper nucleus and also other membrane bound organelles. Example of prokaryotic organisms would include bacteria, blue-green algae, etc. And eukaryotes are those organisms that have eukaryotic cell, and eukaryotic cells are those cells that have well-defined nucleus and all the membrane-bound organelles. For example, animals, plants, etc. These are eukaryotic organisms that have eukaryotic cells. Then we distinguished between prokaryotic cells and eukaryotic cells. So first characteristic for differentiation we considered was cell size. So the average diameter of prokaryotic cell ranges between 0.5 to 5 micrometers, whereas in case of eukaryotic cells the diameter varies between 0.1 micrometers to 40 micrometers. Then we talked about the protoplasm. So in case of prokaryotic cell, protoplasm is relatively rigid, it is resistant to drying, and it can withstand wide changes in pressure and temperature, whereas eukaryotic cells have more fluid and sensitive protoplasm, that is, they are sensitive to drying and they are also sensitive to changes in pressure and temperature. Then we talked about the nucleus. So prokaryotic cells lack a true nucleus. They have circular DNA that is naked in cytoplasm. They do not have chromosomes, and they also, not just chromosomes, they also lack nucleolus or nuclear membrane. Okay, and the nucleoplasm is undifferentiated from the cytoplasm. Whereas in case of eukaryotic cells, they have true nucleus that is bound by a nuclear membrane. Their DNA is linear, which is complexed with proteins and RNA to form chromosomes. And the nuclear membrane is also present, nucleolus is also present, and the nucleoplasm here is distinct. Then we talked about the organelles. So the membrane bound organelles are absent in case of prokaryotic cells, whereas the membrane bound organelles are present in case of eukaryotic cells. Then we talked about the ribosomes. So in case of prokaryotic cells, the ribosomes are smaller and they are randomly scattered in the cytoplasm, whereas the ribosomes are bigger and they can be either free or attached to the endoplasmic reticulum in case of eukaryotic cells. Then we talked about the cell division. So in prokaryotic cells, the division of cell takes place by simple fission. There is no spindle formation. Also, they do not have the process of mitosis and meiosis. Whereas in case of eukaryotic cells, the division takes place by mitosis or by meiosis. Then we talked about respiration. So the respiratory enzymes in case of prokaryotic cells are located on the plasma membrane, whereas in case of eukaryotic cells, mitochondria are the main site of aerobic respiration. Then we talked about photosynthesis. So in prokaryotic cells, there is no organized chloroplast and the process of photosynthesis occurs in photosynthetic membranes that lie freely in the cytoplasm. Whereas in case of eukaryotic cells, they have organized chloroplast and they are the site of photosynthesis. Okay, so in eukaryotes, the plants are photosynthetic organisms. They have organized chloroplast and they are the site where photosynthesis takes place. Okay, and animals are not photosynthetic organisms. They do not have chloroplast. Then we considered few examples of each category. So bacteria and blue-green algae are the examples of prokaryotic cells, whereas all the other organisms could be the examples of eukaryotic cells, for example animals, plants, even human beings, etc. Okay, so I hope you all would have got some great insights by watching today's video. Please do not forget to like and share the video. Till then, thank you for watching.